Hello, hello. Hi, friends. Okay, we are on step 6 of our 10-step program on how to start a podcast, my friends. All right, we have gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Last week was all about hosting platforms. If you don't know what a hosting platform is and you didn't listen to last week's episode, I encourage you go back, listen. Again, like I say every week, make sure that you are listening to each of these steps in sequential order. It is really, really important to make sure that you're catching them step by step by step. Um, Again, I want to really emphasize the importance as we are now in step 6 to really look for somebody like myself, a podcast coach that can help you navigate this launch process. It can start to feel overwhelming. And you guys, this is why I do what I do, because I want to help you not to feel overwhelmed and to have a systematic way of doing this. And having somebody come alongside you is such a great idea in this process. So, one goal is as you think about step 6, if you have followed along this whole process and now you are ready to press record, the goal of this summer, as you are listening through this series, is to prepare you for a fall or a January and February launch. You are doing some epic legwork over the summer so that you can launch successfully in the fall or in January or February, which is the top months to record. So I just want to put that in there as you're listening to these steps, especially after today, as we are going to be talking about pressing record and everything that is involved with pressing that record button. It's going to be really important that once you start going, you get past some mindset stuff and then you press record. Every one of my clients, after they get recording and they start to put these episodes out, they start to feel that rhythm and like, oh, this is real. Okay, I can do this. I can do this. It's like the little engine that could, right? Just getting that momentum going, and it's going to be perfect during the summer before you launch in the fall. All right. So today's main content is all about pressing record. And one of the things that you have to think about when I sit down with my client is, okay, as you listen to podcasts, you will notice that some podcasts, there is zero intro. It just jumps right into a podcast. One example would be my dear friend, Eugene Lunning, who has a podcast called The Unionist. And he literally just starts right off the bat with his episode. And that's awesome. It's very minimalistic. It's done well, and it's just his personality, and that works for him. Another one of our clients, and I would say the majority of our clients, have an intro and an outro. And what I mean by an intro and outro is it is a bookends to your show, to your podcast. So it is the introducing of the generic, like your show description, basically. And then the outro is a wrapping up of your episode, of your podcast in itself. So it's like a thank you, it's a share and subscribe, and I'll keep going into that in just a second. Then there are people that choose to do intro and outros a little different. It could be they do, well, like in my show, you will see that my editor does a teaser. So I call it a teaser, which is pulling a part of the episode that was meaningful or impactful and putting it at the very beginning. And then you go into the intro and then into the actual episode and then the outro. There are so many different ways. Why we love podcasting is because you have the freedom to be creative. Overall, I suggest that people do an intro and outro. Like, here's an example. Like, welcome to podcast coaching, where female entrepreneurs can understand how to launch, grow, and monetize their podcast. Here's our show. That would be an example of an intro. An outro would be, thank you for listening today. If this episode meant something to you and you want to share it with a friend, I would feel so blessed if you shared it with somebody else. Thank you and have a great day. Like, simple, right? Easy peasy. Those are intros and outros. Typically, there is music in the background. I think it sounds cool. When you do it that way, it makes it sound official and more produced. So that is your intro and outro uh, thoughts and ideas that you want to mull around and kind of see you think that where you think you'll be in that intro and your outro. Now, here's a thing is that you want to make sure that your intro is not more than 45 seconds. It needs to be short and sweet. The reason being is that most people don't listen to the intros and outros after the first time. And so we just want to keep it short and sweet and to the point, not a whole 2 hour, a 2 minute introduction every single time. So just keep that in mind for your listeners. They have precious time and they know who you are after that first listen. So keep that in mind moving forward. Let's see, anything else with intros and outros? You know, the other thing that I would suggest too, when I said typically there is music behind the intros and the outros, the spoken audio. Um, so a lot of people will ask me, where do you find music, free music that you can use behind your intro and outro? And to answer that is there's a couple of websites I can put in the show notes that you can buy per license. You need a license to use music. You cannot just use a random song off of Spotify or Apple Music. That is copywriting. So you have to actually license the music. Now, if you're producing under YouTube, you might have to look under their guidelines. I know there's a lot of free songs on YouTube, but if you play it in a podcast app, I'm not sure if the YouTube provided music is still licensed. So you might have to check that out. I'm not 100% sure on that. Um, and the reason why I don't is because I actually, as a producer, I am subscribed to a yearly membership with a company called Soundstripe. And Soundstripe has hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of licensed music that we can download and use as our background tracks. So, which is super cool. So if you are one of my clients, you get access to that for free. If you're in our boot camp, I will give you access to that for free too. So there's that question. All right. So as you were thinking about, okay, do I want to do an intro and outro into my podcast? One of my favorite things to do is to have clients go listen to a bunch of different variety of podcasts. And I want them to really discover, what do you like about their podcast? How did you like how they opened their podcast? How they closed out their podcast? What style do you prefer? What about when you are listening to an episode, how do you like the uniqueness of their podcast? Or do you like it simple? Do you like it minimalistic, like my dear friend? Some people really enjoy, not just thinking about intro and outro, but say, for example, one of my dreams is to have a podcast that is more of an NPR style, which has music and sound effects interspersed throughout the episode. And it's like almost like book chapters of introducing a new concept and then rolling into another one. So if you like the sound of that, then thinking about that, you might want to hire an editor to do that. It is a lot of work to do that. So just preparing yourself to know what to expect after you record and how to record and show up to the mic. Another thing is before you start to press record is there is a mental component. There is a mindset shift that has to happen for a lot of people. There are the few and far between that can just show up to the mic and perform and be really, really comfortable. But I would say the majority of the everyday people, women out here listening, and men will have a moment where there's some hesitation of, okay, how do I get over this imposter syndrome or this mindset shift of my voice might be annoying. I actually did a lot of episodes on that. Was one of my beliefs at the very beginning was really feeling this like, ugh, I can't listen to my voice. It's so obnoxious. And I actually, for years, would turn down my mic in my headphones so I didn't have to hear my voice. And yet, we've got to get to a place of being comfortable behind the mic. And the only way to get over that of this hesitation of showing up behind the mic is to do it. We have to know who we are. We are, again, like I said in step 1 and step 2, that knowing your why, knowing your who, and really understanding the people that you're showing up for can allow you to break through that imposter syndrome, showing up authentically, showing up with real tangible help and a heart to help people. And we talk a lot about that throughout our podcast boot camp online course and how to break through that and really get over that hump of maybe coming up with every excuse in the book to not go and press record or practice. So know that that is available inside of the course as well. All right. Another thing is one of my podcasting mentors, Ryan Dobson, he taught me back, oh gosh, when we first were starting our podcast of Rebel Parenting, he was like, Kristen, there's a difference between radio voice and your real voice. And I started to notice it like with people that we would interview who would have a radio voice versus just being excuse me. Hold on. I started to notice it with people who would have this like radio voice when we would interview them, very well known people versus the real voice that was, before we started recording or right after a recording. And I got to know the difference. And I think that's really important as we get comfortable behind the mic, our real voice comes through. I think when we show up as a radio voice, what I mean by that is like, hi, I'm Kristen. I'm here today to talk to you about how to start a podcast. That is a radio voice. And there might be a time and a place for that. Maybe. I don't know. That sounds really annoying to me. But I would say most people want to hear the real you. Are you a goofball? Are you slingy? I mean, I just think of my daughter who says stuff like slay and facts. And like, if she was going to show up behind the mic, I would encourage her to be herself, not to put it all together tight and toned and polite and whatever. Just show up as you, because if you're showing up as you, you're going to connect with the people that you're called to connect with. So I just want to encourage you to oh, actually, and let me talk about, as my throat is kind of um struggling today. There's a great episode on podcast coaching, all on the literal voice. And I had a voice teacher come on and share her tips for singers, speakers. It was fascinating, and it's one of my most listened to podcasts. So I'm going to link that in the show notes too, because I think it's really important to hear the like physical things that we can do to help our voice as we show up to the mic, especially like somebody like me who it's hard for me to talk nonstop for a while. I'm typically a quiet person, so I know for me some of these techniques that she gave were life changing for me, because I was like, ooh, that is good, and I need to work on that, and I know it has helped me in the past. So I will put that link in the show notes as well. All right, let me go through my notes here. Make sure I'm not listening anything. So again, pressing record, making sure that the more reps you get, the more comfortable you will be. Practice, practice, practice. That's how you overcome imposter syndrome, is you say, you know what? I'm showing up anyway as myself. All right. So now technical preparation with your mic. So of course, we've already walked through the setting up of your equipment, we talked about equipment, but inside of my podcast boot camp, I do actually help you. My husband does help you set up your equipment at home. There's a whole recording on that specifically. So once your mic is set up and you have figured out what platform you're going to be recording on, whether it's Audacity or StreamYard or Riverside, any of those recording platforms are great. You're going to have to figure out the placement of your mic. Typically, it's about a fist length from your mouth to the mic. So that's where you want to position your mic. But if you have a mic, you've got to intimately know your mic. So you're going to like go around your mic and see which place on the mic sounds the best. Are you going to go from back here? Are you going to go here? Are you going to go here? Sorry, Sharon, my editor. I went all around the mic just then. And that's how you learn. You play it back and you go, wow, okay, it sounds like this when I'm this close, and it sounds like this when I'm this close, and it sounds like this when I'm up on it right here. So you're going to find the perfect spot that you can be comfortable and yet it sounds the best. This is why you invested in a good mic. So um, then after that, I want you to just record, have fun, remember your why. Your first recordings should be an intro and an outro if you have chosen to do that. And then the last thing is called a podcast trailer. These are your first three things that you're going to record. I can't do number 3 with my fingers, apparently, if you're watching this. So a podcast trailer is something that I have recently come to see the benefits for. I used to say it's not that big of a deal, but I just helped a gal launch her podcast, and we started with a podcast trailer before any other thing. Actually, and this was another member inside of our podcast coaching Facebook group who did this very thing too. They both started with a podcast trailer, which is basically like a commercial for your podcast trailer. It can be the written show description that you've already been working on, that's going to go inside of your hosting platform. You can just read that, or it could be little snippets of topics that you're going to cover. You can always go back and change your podcast trailer to maybe you want to get real fancy after a year of your podcast and go back and pull out quotes over the last year of your favorite downloaded episodes and use that as your podcast trailer, explaining what your podcast is about. You don't want it to be more than about a minute and a half, maybe 2 minutes. This is just a snippet of what your podcast is about. So because you have not recorded any other episodes yet, at this stage in the game, a podcast trailer is going to be like a teaser. And again, a minute and a half is probably the max that you should do. And then you get to submit that to Apple, which we'll talk about next time. We're going to talk about launching your podcast, but you can submit that part, the podcast trailer, to Apple to get a head start, and people can start leaving you a review before you even have a podcast episode out, because both of those ladies that did a podcast trailer from the very beginning had outstanding reviews right off the bat. So I'm going to suggest that from here on out from anybody that I'm helping launch. And it is such a sweet little encouragement as you start your podcast. So all of that to say, today is the day that I'm going to say, press record, start thinking about your intro and your outro. If you need specific help on what to include on your intro and your outro, or even your podcast trailer, friends, book a discovery call with me. Let's figure out what's the best route. Is it one-on-one with me? Is it just coaching? Is it booking a coaching hour with me to help you process and do the creative part of all of this? I'm here for you. I want you to know that I am here for you. I don't want you to do this frustratingly, like wait on doing it for 2 weeks because you're stuck. I am here for you. This is my job. I love my job. I love being a podcast coach. So don't do it alone. And remember that you have the option to do it for yourself or done with you. So, all right, next week, we're going to talk about step 7, which is all about launching and your plan around that. So stay tuned for that. And in the meantime, check out all of the fun mentions that I talked about inside of the episode, and I will catch you next week. All right, happy summer.